The last 30 to 40 days have really been difficult in our community and the surrounding community with respect to gun violence. It has me really concerned. But Michaela, I'm curious to know, how do you feel?
Not great. Not great at all. I feel that, we shouldn't have to fear that when we leave our house that we're not going to come back home. As a child, I fear for that every single day. I want to be able to come home and see my family and see everyone smiling and get along. I don't want to have to be on the streets worried that someone's going to shoot me or someone's going to get to me. I don't want to fear that. And the violence that we have witnessed over these last 30 to 40 days have not helped my fear no better.
If there's one thing that concerns you the most, what would that be?
Everyone, I can say, has a fear of dying, but it's the way that you die. And I don't want to be a victim, and I don't want to be on someone's t-shirt because someone wanted to choose a wrong way of violence and shoot me just because. I don't want to die that way. I want to die and have someone be able to remember me for all of the goodness that I've provided in this community and all the goodness and love that I've given out to my community and have shown into my community. But the one way and that I fear is I don't want to die from gun violence.
The issue of gun violence in our community has become more critical over the past several months. The city of Pontiac has the 5th highest violent crime rate in Michigan and is among the top 25 in the nation among cities with a population of 30,000 or more. We've heard you, Pontiac. Numerous questions have been asked around safety and what we as a community can do to safeguard our city. During our town hall today, we have invited Oakland County Sheriff and 3 panelists to share their thoughts and expertise on this matter. Joining us today is Mr. Brian Gillian, Vice Chair of Life Beyond Reentry, Chief Judge Cynthia Walker, Pontiac 50th District Court, and Chief Val Gross, Chief of Security, Pontiac School District, former Chief of Police, Pontiac Police Department, and Dr. Semino Scott, Executive Director of Pontiac Collective Impact Partnership, will moderate this conversation. Dr. Scott, it's on you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Semino Scott, and I'll be your moderator for this event. I'd like to turn first to Deputy Gil Garrett of the Oakland County Sheriff Department to let us know what's happening in the city of Pontiac with respect to the recent escalation of gun violence.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. We've all been in the city for quite some time, especially the people that you're going to see coming up on this call. I've been serving the city for many years. So up into the uptick of violence that's happened in the past couple of weeks, it's been a set of gun violence, but the gun violence has been not necessarily predicated to, if you're saying gun violence relates to gangs and things of that nature, but it's more specific than that. It's more detailed than that. It's more domestic around when you start drilling down into the cases. And I think that's what we're going to hope to do today. It's not necessarily get into the details of the cases, but understand why these certain things are happening. And so I can't tell particular cases because they're under investigation, but we want to discuss the culture and climate in which these things are occurring. And what we have been seeing thus far, when you break down the cases, it's just teens, individuals not making solid decisions on what they should do and resorting to gun violence because they feel like that's the only thing, the result. And so for me, I'm hoping to have a great discussion this evening with this wonderful panel to help bring some solutions and some resolutions to say, what do we want our city to look like? Because at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. What do we want our city to look like? I serve here, I live here, I've raised my child here. So it's not just I'm not coming from the aspect of just a deputy that works here. Yeah, that's part of it. But I'm invested in the city of Pontiac. And so when we have the conversation, I'm hoping that we can get some questions and we can get some dialogue going that can be continued dialogue around what we want our city to look like. Because anytime you resort to gun violence, anytime you think as a man that you need to resort to gun violence to try to control a woman, or you think you can control a woman or impress a girl by using guns to shoot at other people, that is not the correct answer. That is not the way. That is not how these children and most of the children in the city of Pontiac is being raised. So I don't want to isolate these incidents to say, hey, we had 13 murders in the city of Pontiac. I want to talk about why we had 13 murders and get more specific into the fact that and we've caught everybody, all the responsibles, we caught them. But I don't want to keep catching responsibles and not understanding why we having victims. And when victims are victims of gun violence and they say, I don't want to say anything to the police, but you know that this person did it. You understand who they are, and it possibly could be a family member. Like, those are the kind of conversations we need to have and deep dive in and dialogue, because we can get into everybody else. We can get into all the stats about what's happening in other places. We can talk about, if you want to talk about how violence relates to the education, but nothing really comes concrete until you start asking yourself, why are our children doing this? And why are the people who we raise and live with not saying anything about it? And so we could talk about not snitching. We could talk about, those rules of those things that we necessarily think is cool. But when we live in a community where everybody knows everybody. So I'm not going to pretend to sit here and act like I'm just this major city and I don't know who my neighbor is. We know exactly what's going on. Now it's time to start talking about it so we can reduce having victims, so we can stop having as many suspects. We're going to have crime, but we don't need to have murders. And we can do something about that here today.
Thank you, Deputy Garrett. And to the heart of your comment about why are we having so much gun violence, along with the survey that accompanied the registration form for this town hall, many of the people that responded to the survey highlighted the role of the parent. And so I'd like to turn to Judge Walker with respect to the question around parents. What role do parents play in the escalation of gun violence that's plagued our community recently?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all, but let me just take off the judge hat for a minute and just talk as a parent, because first of all, parents have to be working with their children before they become offenders, right? Parents have to be parents, not buddies, not friends, not competition for children, but parents, to lead and guide, lead by example. So I think there is a responsibility on parents to communicate with their children, to be aware of who their friends are, what they're getting involved in, substance abuse issues, social media use. There are so many facets of it. But parents need to be involved, have to be involved in their children's lives so that they know what's going on. But they have to instill basic values: honesty, self-respect, respect of others, just an understanding, and talk about being civil to people. Because a lot of the interactions that end up at the court are because people do not know how to communicate other than through the use of some type of weapon. But it's not really empowering them. What it's doing is bringing them into a system where now they're looking at potential life-changing consequences that are not going to be good once they get in the court system.
Absolutely. And, speaking of parents, we know the reality of the city of Pontiac. We live in a community that has a high rate of poverty, high rates of teenage pregnancy. How can we as a community better support our young parents and our old parents who haven't self-actualized as of yet? And that goes to the judge and anyone else that would like to chime in on that.
It's interesting because we live in an environment now where parents, grandparents are often feeling not comfortable in saying something to younger parents when they see things that are wrong because they're afraid of the reaction. So I think part of it is people who have, let's say they're more mature in their walk in life, they have to develop relationships, because you can't just talk to people you don't know. They may not listen to you. They're making judgments about you based on what they see. It's important. We have to have a relationship with younger people, feel comfortable enough in talking to these younger parents and providing some guidance. because there's no manual that they can read that's going to tell them how to function in this world. It's challenging.
Absolutely. And Chief Gross, you see this inside of our school district. And I'd just like for you to kind of comment on what role do you see parents playing in the school relative to some of the challenges you are confronted with there?
Thank you, Dr. Scott, and thank you for having me on the panel tonight. That's the big question. Parents today, especially Pontiac is special. Pontiac is really special. It's different than other areas. You know, when kids come to school every day, you don't know what they've been dealing with at home. You know, we have children raising children. We have grandparents who are grandparents at the age of 34 dealing with issues today. You know, parents are sending their kids to school to be raised. We're the parents, we feed them, we clothe them, we even sometimes bathe them in the school district. Kids are looking for structure. That's what we expect from our parents. You know, we, like Judge Walker said, we don't need for them to be friends. You know, I'm not your friend. I didn't raise my son that way. You know, I love you, but school is for school, recess is for play. We have to have parents understand that you send a kid to school, you know, we're the social worker, we're the disciplinarian, and we're the comforter when it comes to the kids in schools today. And we as a community have to understand that there are a lot of issues with a lot of children coming into the school every day. They could be in a bad mood. Why are they in a bad mood? Maybe because they hadn't eaten that morning. Maybe they haven't even slept all night. Maybe they're the ones that's getting their 3 brothers and sisters dressed and fed to go to school, if there's anything to eat at all. So that's the main goal as a community. We have to understand where our kids are coming from, and we have to let parents know what their roles are.
Thank you. Chief Gross, we're going to have to get you to look at the other camera because, yep, there you go. There you go.
That's weird.
And so, Brian, you and I are kindred spirits. We came up in the 80s, both of us involved in the drug trade in the city of Pontiac. I had my experience as a juvenile in incarceration. You had your experience as an adult in incarceration. When many of these adults that are coming home are also parents, but you've come home and now you work with Life Beyond Reentry. I want you to talk for a moment about some of the challenges our returning citizens have and what you're doing at Life Beyond Reentry to help them stay home when they get here.
Okay, first and foremost, honors to everyone that's watching, listening, and that is a part of this panel. Very important question. And a lot of times when we're coming home, we have to understand that we left, and when we come back, there's sometimes we have a stigma on us that we were these bad people, we couldn't, and you can't get it right. So we come home, and I say this for myself and a lot of people that I'm dealing with Life Beyond Reentry, we come home with this Superman complex that we have to take care of everything and get everything back that we have. So therefore, we're coming home trying to save everyone, or we're doing or I'm going to be this great father, even if I wasn't a great father before. So we have to understand that this is all put on us when we're coming home, besides being gone for a while. And we have to, I think, first and foremost, understand, I think the biggest problem is we have to meet our children where they're at, not where we're at when we left. Not that parent, you know, they could have been, I left, my son was 4. I came home, he was 14. I was in a disciplinary where I was growing up. And so I tried to institute that, and it didn't work. So I had to meet him where he was at, video games, different interests that I had missed and then tell him, hey, this is where we need to be, because he had to tell me this is where we need to be. And I'm glad Valor and the judge said, I had to let a lot of gentlemen know, as long as female, we can't as parents be friends. We can be friendly, but we can't institute into being friends that we're equals. We're not. And we have to say, yeah, even though I was gone, and I understand that, we have to be apologetic, but we have to move on in a sense of, this is what I can do for you now. And I think once we get to that point, we will get our children to look back at us as, someone that they can confide in or someone they can listen to. So with LBRs, what we try to present is you have opportunities to do these things, but first you got to check that ego. You got to humble yourself enough to know these children and your family don't know you. They know the time that you left. You have to reinstitute that you've changed, hopefully, and bring that apart as new. And so I think that's a big problem that we have, is really instituting that, getting reacclimated back into society, is that we have to feel like, and have our families feel like, we don't have this stigma on it. I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm not going to revert back to what we were doing to get me into prison. So I hope that answered you.
Absolutely. Brian, I do have a follow-up question. For you personally, what was your biggest challenge when you came home from prison?
My biggest challenge was allowing people to remove that stigma that what I was before I went. I was fortunate enough to have a good family structure to where I prepared myself the last 2 years. So I came home with a good credit score. I came home with job opportunities. I came home to a viable home. So with that said, the biggest thing that I think I had to deal with was really telling people I'm not that person. I'm not BK. I'm Brian Killian Bay. I have changed. I have maturated into what I did as a kid and a child. It was childish things. Now I do things that as a man that I'm able to understand that just because of your age don't make you a man. You have to develop into that. So I instituted that into saying, leave my past as that and let it know that is what I grew from into what I am now. And I had to change my image. So once you change your image into, people will see you that you're different.
So that was generations ago. When I heard Deputy Garrett speak, he didn't mention drugs. Deputy Garrett, can you talk to us a little about what are some of the root causes of some of the gun violence we're seeing today?
You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm also not just a deputy, but I'm president of the school board. So simultaneously, as I've been serving in law enforcement in this community, I've also served as much time in education. And so I've got a chance to see it from both sides. And so I'm gonna go from the educational side is to the point when they come to school, and Chief talked about this, Judge talked about this, our brother Bay just talked, Killian Bay just talked about it. Parents have not understood that they are the structure. And they have not understood that it starts with them. And that just because they receive assistance doesn't mean they need assistance overall. Like they need to understand that it's just assistance. It's not to be the crutch. And so in the community, and I'm not going to just say all of Pontiac, because Pontiac is so diverse. A lot of times we get into these conversations and they will pigeonhole on just one side of it. And then it's like, it's Pontiac. No, it's a type of mentality amongst certain individuals that feel because of the consequences of what I'm going through that I need to suffer through all of that. And so some of our children that attend our schools, and I'm not just talking about the public school, I'm talking about charter schools as well, they come in with a boatload of problems and issues. So how does that relate over into the streets? Because Pontiac is so small, Pontiac Pontiac is large, but it is small, and it's a network community. Everybody pretty much knows everybody, right? So when something is happening in the neighborhood, it's going to transfer over to the schools. And so if you have people in your schools that don't know the community that they're choosing to work in, that is an additional problem, because they begin to stereotype or put on a bias on that child from where they come from or what they've seen. And so the kid still is not getting any help, and then feel like ain't nobody listening to them. So let's go dig a little deeper, right? So you get these kids who say, hey, look, I'm not going to school. I'm not, parent structure, things at home, it's not going well. And you get about 3 and 4 of them together. So they feel like they are there for each other. Now, we talked about drugs, right? And we talked about the sale of drugs. Well, since the legalization of marijuana, and I won't go too deep into it, right? And so we don't criminalize it as much as we used to. You get kids now who sell marijuana illegally, but because of there's not a consequence to it, they have a false sense of, I got a sense of power. And then this group decides to say, hey, I can make a little bit of money from this amongst the same group. So let's now bring it to the fact that we get a young lady who says, I don't want to be at home. Well, I got a child. Pontiac is the fastest place that I've seen an 18-year-old that's with the child to go get their own place, but never get no adult skills when they get their place. So they get their place. And now they thinking that the person that they have the child with, because he has a little money from some things that he's doing, he gonna be with me. Then she finds out, she goes through some heartbreaks and some misunderstandings, and then now they're arguing. So she goes to date somebody else. So there's a conflict between the two. And those two gentlemen feel like, oh, I'm a man because I'm making an earning, I'm doing something, I'm a man. And now they have this young lady in common, but they have a child in common. And see, these are the things that we don't necessarily like to talk about, but we're talking about the structure, get into the nuts and bolts of it before you start talking about what a judge didn't do or what a prosecutor didn't do or what somebody else didn't do. Well, let's get to the meat of it. This is the meat of it. And so you get into an argument, you got two sets of groups that don't understand how to have conflict resolution. They begin picking up guns, shooting at each other. The young lady's still in the middle. Now the kid is still growing. So now this goes on for a couple years. Let's say 3-4 years. And now the kid doesn't even know the name when they get ready to go to school. Because now I didn't even go to school because I'm getting pressure from here to go to work. And these two gentlemen that were shooting at each other that I may have children by, one is maybe being incarcerated, and the other one may be gone. So there's a lot of trauma and built-in trauma there that we got to really start talking about, digging into. And so now you get that kid that's in the schools, that's at 4 or 5 years old, and starting to figure out now, okay, what am I to do? Now they're coming in at a learning disadvantage. And so sometimes our children are brought to us in the educational system as a result of a consequence of an action, not necessarily saying, this is what I wanted to happen for my future. But if we don't talk about that, if we don't help resolve that, if we don't start implementing or talking to people like Killian Bay to understand and say, okay, listen, what he just said tonight was very powerful. It was more powerful than any other thing that I've been on. It's the fact of how he had to readjust himself to even talk to something that he birthed his own son. His son was 4. It wasn't that he wasn't a father when he left, but there's some things that had to happen. Now he's 14. And they had to make that readjustment. And now they had to get into his life. So what's happening in our community is the fact that, and I'm hoping this kind of catapults us to where we need to be, is to have those type of conversations, to understand it doesn't end there. To understand that it doesn't end because you were a teen mother. It doesn't end because you have 2 or 3 kids. Pontiac is a place that has so many resources that it's about us, those who are sitting at the table, getting those resources to those particular kids, right? And so now we have to face these cases and making sure that some of our young men that are facing these cases, I take it upon myself, and I have a few other friends, that they don't face the cases alone. Because just because they're incarcerated, don't stop them from being a kid. Just because they made a mistake, it don't stop them from, they made a kid in a juvenile decision at a time in their life, but they're still young. They still are young men. They're not dead. And sometimes we get to a point where we just feel they made a mistake and we throw them away. Nobody shows up to court with them. Nobody's there for them to talk to them when they're in that jail at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning crying, when they can't sleep and they got sniffles. And we just talking about county jail. We ain't talking about prison. So because I work for an organization like Oakland County Sheriff's Department office that says, okay, listen, what do we do holistically to help the communities that we serve in? Okay, we're gonna do community policing team. What does that look like? I know it's been a cliche word. And stop me if anybody jump in when you get ready. But it's a cliche word because I can talk about this all day. I love this. So it's a cliche word, right, at this point. But community policing is going into the community and partnering with individuals that know how to get a solution to the individuals that we are here to serve. That's what community policing. It's not coming in saying it's an arrest. And if those things have to take the place of you have to do an arrest, community policing is saying, I just don't turn my back on you because you didn't make this mistake. Mm-hmm. So it's a teacher model, and then also just get into the nuts and bolts of everything.
And so I'm going to turn back to the judge for a moment before I get to some questions that have come in during the conversation. Judge Walker, you've been on the bench for a long time. Is what you see today relative to gun violence different than what you saw maybe 10 years ago?
It is, because the number of cases is so much higher. It seems like there are many more people, young people, who have guns and who are carrying them around because they feel that they need protection, or they feel that it gives them an edge, it gives them a leg up. And what it's doing is, because there are many reasons that these guns can be discovered. They can be just driving in a car, happen to have a gun in the vehicle, it's not registered, they don't have a permit to be carrying a concealed weapon, and a tail light is out. Or they're driving without lights on, or they have someone in a car who just threw trash out of the window. There are many ways that the vehicle gets stopped, the gun is discovered, and now they're looking at a possible felony charge. I don't think that's their intent, but we did not have as many guns that were visible, or as many gun charges that were being brought. And I think the reason for that was the escalation in the violence recently, because people are not communicating with each other. There are all these beefs on the street, one group arguing with another. And as Deputy Garrett said, a lot of it does have to do with relationships, men battling. And if I can say, it's not just men who are the perpetrators of a lot of the offenses, it's women too. And this may be a side note, but it's one thing that I have to say to people who are listening, and this has to do with relationships. And at some point, maybe we need to have a talk about that. Male, female, 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 male, male, whatever it is. If you are with someone and you don't trust them to the point where you have to go in their phone, that creates a problem. If you are looking for a problem in somebody else's phone, you're probably going to find it. Mm-hmm. You're going to find text messages, pictures, something that you may misinterpret. You may interpret it correctly, but that creates a whole nother level. A great number of the cases that we see now have to do with that, and those escalate over time. But there's something else that Deputy Garrett said, and I think Chief Gross did too. When people see something, they have to say something. We're talking about making our community safe. This not wanting to tell because I'm concerned about, being a snitch. Well, suppose it's your mother who's the person who gets hurt. Suppose it's your grandmother, your brother. When it gets closer to home, the stakes are a little bit different, but we have to accept as a community responsibility for what's happening. And we have to feel comfortable enough that whatever we share, whatever we talk about, when we tell something, that it's going to be dealt with appropriately and fairly. So, going back to your original question, there are more guns that are being brought to us now, and they're coming in a variety of ways.
Thank you.
Could I say something, Doc?
Sure.
Another issue with the violence also, I believe, is back in the day, we had places to go. Just as only maybe 10 years ago, we've lost all our community centers. We've lost our Boys and Girls Club. Kids are looking for something to do, and they don't have that. They want to look forward to something, and they just don't have it. And, as Gil was talking about community policing, the key thing about community policing is this. Community policing is being proactive, not reactive, getting police involved with the school district, getting police involved with the communities, getting police involved with every aspect of that city that they're patrolling. So Judge Walker is right, because I worked in those days when I was chasing Brian around. We're friends. Now, people don't understand that. We're friends. And we were on opposite sides of things, but we grew up in the same community and we respected each other. But those things are different now. Kids just don't understand what a relationship is. And Judge Walker, you're right. My father had a saying about being jealous. A jealous man or woman can't go to work. Because if you're looking for trouble, you're going to find trouble. But we have to find something for our kids to look forward to. That's the key. And right now, with what's happening in our school district, with the leadership that we have, this is the first time that I've seen since I've been here for a while. I've worked in the school district for many years as a police officer, as a youth counselor, as a supervisor, now as chief of security, that I see a school board and an administration led by our superintendent getting along like this and making the right decisions, being proactive in how we're teaching our kids, being proactive in what are we going to do about all the violence that's going on in the community, hiring people that care about the kids, want to deal with the kids, not just here trying to get a paycheck. But I think the key to stopping the violence in this city is giving our children something to look forward to, whether it's going to the boys club, whether it's doing something in school, making school fun again, having this basketball team, being able to go to a football game without being afraid that something's going to happen. If they believe that it's safe, if they believe that it's something they're going to have fun at, that gives them something else to do rather than picking up a gun.
So let's get into some of the questions. So the first question that came in is, I'm involved with the Trinity Jail Ministry. What programs are available to individuals who are released from jail and have a felony on their record? Sometimes when there is no structure, like a transitional program, individuals resort to crime. And I think this one, anyone can answer, but Brian, I want you to get us started on that.
Okay. At Life Beyond Reentry, we give the opportunities for employment. We find, and we have a list of employers that are felon, as they say, friendly, and that are willing to work with people that have that, mark on them or that stigma on them. We also have counseling, mentorship, and I'm just, to be 100, I even sit down and tell most of the people that I deal with my past and that I've been there too, and reach out to them, give them my phone number and say, hey, if you just need anyone to talk to, because a lot of times we just need to vent with someone that understands what we went through. But a lot of times, especially in Oakland counties, we've shut that out. We've shut out that, oh, you have people coming back home, and it's not that many resources, but they are there, and especially through LBR, that's willing to help. And there's other organizations that surround. I've talked to a few of the churches that are willing to do certain things, in the community. But it's not that many in Oakland County for whatever reason. I do not understand and do not know. We've kind of thrown that under the rug, meaning that, they don't want that type of programs here. I think now, since Biden and everybody is funneling this money, a lot more things are coming to existence. But basically, that's one of the reasons I came through the LBI program. I joined back and became the vice president because I seen the need for these opportunities to help other people that was in my situation. So, I hope again, like I said, it's counseling, mental health. We have counselors there, employment, and we even deal with a lot of people that deal with the housing. So there's programs out there that are just limited, and we have to really get behind programs like LBR. And that's where, to be honest with you, Dr. Scott, we're lacking in. It is difficult. We barely get funded. I've been working for free for 3 years. That lets you know, 3 years. And I've been out to Oakland County, talking to the judges. I've talked several times in this community, but then yet it's just like, I guess it wasn't important, or, just the right thing for, politically speaking. So.
And so, Judge, I think this one is for you. Are first-time firearm possession offenders more likely to do time?
It depends. It's going to depend on the circumstances of the case. If a person is possessing a concealed weapon, that may be charged as a felony, and the person could be looking at the potential for prison time. But it depends on the circumstances as a whole, what the prosecutor and the defense attorney may try to negotiate for that person. So with a person with an absolutely clean record, stellar background, I can't speak for any other office, whether they would be inclined to reduce it, but keep in mind, we are in an environment where weapons are a problem in this community, a big problem. So with that, there may be a lessening of a willingness to reduce the charges.
So Brian, back to you.
Factor.
I'm sorry, Judge. I'm sorry.
No, I was finished.
Brian, back to you. Is your program just for males in reentry?
No, it is for males and females, men and women.
So, and Chief or Deputy Garrett, this one would be for you. I think more young men need to hear this from the people who have experienced it. But in most cases, these people are not allowed to speak with students in the school. Maybe ask the panelists their opinion on this comment.
Well, I'll be the first one to take that. And I've had this conversation. We started was part of the start of an organization, Brothers United for Change, right? And in this and it was a man who got together who just basically said, hey, listen, we need to talk to our young men. We need to get them under some type of, some guidance. And how do we do that? And now every type of, profession, culture, style is in this room. And so we are putting it together in areas as far as when people who it is a public institution. So if you have a felony, and it's certain types of felonies, you just can't go into the schools. And so I hear this in our community so much where it almost feels sometimes where, some people are aggressive in the fact that they think we're being punitive. Okay, understand there's consequences to every action, but that doesn't mean that you can't reach that child, because we do have children in the school that is in our school system. And I know for a fact that live adult lives, but they're still old enough to go to high school. Well, those individuals, you put a program around where individuals can come in and speak as a program, not necessarily a daily program, but it's more so like you have something in a meeting in a not gymnasium, but a theater. And then you have these individuals come in to speak. You're not speaking and volunteering at the school at that time. You're not with the kids. You're coming in with this program because you have a certain skill set to help that could possibly change the lives of the certain men that's in this room. And that necessarily doesn't always have to be done at the school. And so sometimes you got to have conversations, broader conversations on how to show people how they can make an impact. And so, no, we're not going to change the rules because somebody may feel like they want to be inside the school and they have a certain felony or something has happened in the past that they can't be in the school. But we do, and we will provide an opportunity for you to join organizations such as Buck that has everybody involved. That, hey, maybe you can't be in the schools, but them same kids, this Pontiac, them same kids, we only have them for 6.5 hours. Then they back out in the community. You can go to the rec center. That's where we're gonna be at. Now, since we've been going to that rec center, it's been an improvement in attendance going to that rec center. And those same men who may not can volunteer in that school are showing how they can do robotics, showing how they can put radios, showing them about carpentry, showing them about other skill sets. Just because you're coming home, doesn't mean that you don't have a gift. Doesn't mean that you don't have something to say. My belief, and I'll just say it on here, my belief in being here, both in education and law enforcement, is the fact that the municipality as a whole never looked at the community as overall. You do have a problem with people going to jail. You do have citizens that's coming home. And if the municipality, we do need a program. And if you're speaking to that, if you're going to have a conversation around that, it can't just be people sidebarring conversation. Like, it has to come from the top. And our municipality is that. And we need to have that conversation. It's not all on 50th District Court. It's when they get to court, that's the after action. We want before they get to court. And before they get to court as a municipality, and Mayor-elect Tim Grimo spoke to this plenty of times, is the fact that we do need to partner up with LBR. But that has to be a conversation that has to start off in January. And we can't look at what didn't happen before the end. Mr. Killian Bay is right here, right now, offering the same program. Why do we have to reinvent that? We have a problem with reinventing things in the city of Pontiac, because I may not necessarily, I don't practice the art of forgiveness. So they got something going over at LBR. I don't want to go over there. Well, if that's the only place that we get in and you say you won't help, you're going to have to practice the art of forgiveness. Right? So, Doc, you got to stop me. I told you to be here forever. You got to stop me.
So,
I just ready. I'm ready, Doc.
So look, this is for everybody. Idealistically, what do you all think we need to do to be more proactive in keeping kids out of the system as opposed to being reactive once they get jammed into the legal situation?
First of all, again, we need programs for our kids. We need community centers. We need boys and girls clubs. We need places and things for our children to do. Also, we need something to help our parents be able to parent. We understand that they may be single parents at home and they can't afford or do things like afford childcare or anything like that, to be able to go to a parent-teachers conference, to be able to go to their sons or daughters' football or basketball game. We have to put programs together to assist them in being able to help them be able to parent, whether it's going to the home or thinking of other ideas outside the box to help them be able to get structure in their home. You know, we're on what Gil was saying. You know, I got another program that I'm trying to start that's in its infancy that I've been discussing with Maurice Mahone, fathers mentoring young men in the schools, coming in during the day and being able to, between classes and things, talk to them, because a lot of our young men never had a father in the home. They don't know what it's like to talk to a real man every day. You know, not being talked down to, but being talked to. That's one of the programs that, like I said, it's in its infancy. We're trying to put together. We've been talking about this about a month now. And that's something I look forward to bringing into the school with the assistance of Gil and other board members and the blessing of the superintendent. But we, again, you're right. We have to be proactive in what we find our kids to do, giving them something to do. That's what I believe is one of the biggest helps that we can do. Find something, give them something to look forward to.
Anyone else want to tackle that question?
Let me say this. First, I have to say I apologize to all those for portraying the image of falsehood that I did before learning how to be a man. And I say that to say this to get to our young men and women, we have to give them better images, better programs, to camel back on what Val said. A lot of times we have attracted them to the wrong images. So in order for them to change, we have to change. We have to put better people in front of them. We have to allow, like I said, I'm so honored to have the judge here, to see that somebody that looks like our sisters out there can be successful and can change your life in a better way, hopefully. But the time you usually seeing her is kind of late. But it's, however, it gives you an aspect that you can change things differently by being in these positions. You can change your community. If she's just fair, which I know she is, that changes our community. Where someone else would have thrown them away, like Gil has said, she probably is not going to. So I say that we have to stand up and give them the opportunity to see better things. Dr. Semino Scott, we know where we came from, the streets. However, you got doctor in front of your name. We need to be out there giving these guys, these young men and women, better examples of, their futures. We need to have, like you say, we went up to the rec centers, allowing them to see how to put in a radio, how to do carpentry, how to do everything. Because college ain't for everybody. Sports is not for everybody. But we have to understand our community and say, listen, this is what you can do. And then we have to be truthful about that dead end prison, the high school to prison pipeline. We have to tell them, and I will tell them, you don't want to go into them demon holes. We have to be real with that, with the people that's coming home. This is not a pat on the back. This is, oh, I made it. This is not a valor or honor. No, it's not disgraceful because we made it, but everybody's made a mistake. I just got caught. And the persons that went. So let's sit up here and say to ourselves, listen, let's be real. You don't want to go there. And be real with these young men and women that this is, when you're committing these crimes, you're toting these guns, and you're doing these things, this is what it can lead to. And I think once we start doing that on a more above than average place in our lives, we can get across to a lot of them. Because, it's going to come genuine. And that's what they need.
Judge, would you like to chime in on this question?
Yeah, I so agree with what Brother Killian Bay said, and also Chief Gross. Better examples for our children. And that's where mentoring comes in. Just career exploration, even in elementary school. If we wait until high school, we have really missed a window of opportunity. Our children need to be exposed at an early age. And I can tell you that other areas do it because they come and visit our court at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade level and bring their entire classes. Just career exploration, just the exposure, and that you can do this, and just showing young children that if I can do it, you can do it. I'm a little girl, grew up on the south side of Chicago, immigrant parents, it is possible. But they have to want it. They have to hope for it and dream for it at an early enough age, and then see those images in front of them and view them as reachable, just regular people.
Deputy Garrett, please close out this question for us, sir.
Yes, sir. We have to do more of what we're doing right now. And we have to be as open. This panel has been as open and as transparent as possible and as it could be. You're not going to find a group of young, I call us young men and women and professionals, because if you can take the time to see how each one of these professional careers have progressed, where you went from the chief of police and now chief of police into the schools, where you went from, and even though he made his mistakes, when you say Killian Bay, and he went from BK to Killian Bay, but he still has that brilliant mind. Don't let him fool you. Highest GPA, you get into his IQ, that's a whole different story. I know him personally. And so when you get into a judge that says that, no, you don't just have to stay in Chicago, you can come to Pontiac and make the same greater difference. When you can say Dr. Scott, and I know who Semino Scott was, you know what I'm saying? When you can say, when you look at F&G Media, who's putting this all on, who's in the back scene, that's making sure that we broadcast out to the world. When you look at a Kano Phillips that's here, and his father, he's leading the name for Clarence E. Phillips Foundation. You could do a nonprofit in the honor of your father and do something great and put this on so little boys and little girls can have the same opportunity. When you look at Anisha Hannah, who goes from saying, okay, we can praise God and we can be in church and we can do these things and we do the same programs, and now I want to make them, I want to do something different with Pontiac Collective. See, that's what makes Pontiac so different. And that's why I always say that you're not going to put me in a basket or a group like everywhere else. That's what makes us unique. So it's about us being proactive, right? But the key part about being proactive is that you got to go get them, because they don't know that they don't know the value of what they have. So we got to do more of this. We got to make some phone calls. I do group text messaging in the morning. I randomly I would get into a room full of people in Pontiac, and I know they got iPhones. I'll send them a nice message on AirDrop. They don't know where it came from. They just know it popped up on their phone. At 65,000 people in this city, I can guarantee you 60,000 people got phones. Find ways to communicate with them and connect with them where they're at. They look at it all day long. We had to be shut in for a year and a half. We got to use what's available to us. That phone is available to us. And for a year and a half, that internet ran our lives. We didn't throw it away. Now we readjusting to it. So I'm excited about what's going to happen in the new year, and be proactive in making sure that and just give you these quick numbers real quick, because I know people like numbers. So when I say that we had 128 handguns seized in the city of Pontiac, and if you do that by 10 bullets, that's 1,200 bullets. That was 1,280 possible other victims, right? Well, we had 13. So when you start doing numbers and you start looking at the data and you start looking at, okay, road patrol arrest, we had 3,300. This all the way going to December now. But we had warrants actually issued was only 1,300. So that was 2,000 people that got arrested, but 2,000 possibly people that said, you know what? I didn't go down that road. So I look at numbers a little different. I look at hope and I look at possibilities. And please excuse my optimism, because of the fact that those 28 people victims, because people who got seized those guns weren't necessarily people who were riding around and doing crazy stuff either. They didn't know the laws. But some of them didn't pay the price for it too. So sometimes you got to have conversations for those who say, ooh, I bit that bullet. Let me talk to somebody else about not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
We got to use what's available to us. This is available to us. And then now we got to take this to our community and the various demographics in the city of Pontiac and make sure they feel and understand clearly that they're not alone.
Well, thank you so much. And let me thank each of you this evening for being such an amazing group of folks on this panel who spoke from the heart about issues that impact a city that we all love. And so much of this conversation revolved around our youth. And so in closing, I'd like to end with the thoughts of one of our youth. So without further delay, let me just say thank you once again, and turn to Brianna Teamer, who is a member of the Collective Impact Partnership.
So first and foremost, like Dr. Scott said, I would like to thank all of our panelists for coming on our platform and letting our audience hear your voice. It's really been impactful and insightful this evening. Being a young adult myself, it's been a lot different than what my elders have described to me within our ever-changing community. Cost of living is rising, rent is equivalent to mortgage. And like Judge Walker said, it's not too easy finding the one. But still, I am grateful and happy that my generation, our voices are finally being heard within our community. And on behalf of Pontiac Collective Impact Partnership, we want to thank everyone, including our panelists and everyone on our Facebook Live and our YouTube Live for joining us today. In addition, we will also be having, if you feel there's anyone that is a Pontiac resident who has impacted our community or outside of our community, we have a Pontiac Proud initiative right now going on. So we invite you to nominate anyone that you feel would qualify for that. You can find more information about that initiative online at our website at www.pontiaccollectiveimpact.org. If you like this town hall, don't worry, we are coming back in January with our third town hall series. We will be having a discussion around our community, of course, and how we can improve and just educating our community and our residents on what's going on within the city. And finally, we would like to thank you from our family to yours for joining us today. And we wish you a very, very happy holiday and be safe.